Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Many of us, as we approach midlife, we realize that we probably don't have as much time left in the workforce, at least from the traditional thinking point of view. In an old industrial world economy, we would work until we were 60, 65 years old, hopefully save enough money to be able to settle back, watch the sunset, or do all those things that we put off just because we were working too hard. Well, this day and age doesn't seem to bring us that kind of a promise, as you hear many people losing whole retirement funds just before they're ready to step out of the workplace, literally empty-handed. It sort of causes a little bit of tainting there on the picture when you go up to think, is it even possible to even retire this day and age, and especially retire worry-free? Our guest today joining us on the program is author of the book, Never Worry About Retirement Again. He talks about some very basic principles, but sometimes it's the fundamentals that a lot of us overlook, that if we had done them more consistently and persistently, we may not have to worry about things the way we probably are now. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today the founder and president of Campbell Financial Services, our guest, Aaron Campbell. Aaron, how are you today?
I'm doing fabulous, Daniel. Thanks for having me today.
You bet. Now, is it possible to never worry about retirement again, as your book states?
Well, let's face it, there's some folks out there that, including myself, that are probably going to worry about something all the time. But when it comes right down to it, you can only worry so much once you put the planning and the time and education in place. I find that the worry level goes down and the happiness level goes up. If you plan properly, there's no reason to really worry. You can only do what you can do, and I think that's really what the book is referring to when it talks about never worrying about retirement again. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty well, how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting when you think about the money game that there are so many people that really don't know what it is, or if they do, they don't really understand it. With all the jargon that you have going out there with swaps and bonds and money market shares and so forth and so on, it's almost as though people either, A, don't want to really try to submerge themselves into getting a financial education, which you say is very important here in the book, but also realizing that, that because they do this, they might avoid some really big mistakes with some people that might guide them in the wrong direction for their own self-interest.
Oh, that's very true. We live in a world today where there's very little education when it comes to your finances and money. I mean, back 30 years ago, back in the, prior to the 1980s, think about maybe your grandparents or parents possibly who may have worked for the same company for 30 years or so, and as a reward for their dedicated service to that company, they received a pension plan or a guaranteed lifetime payment in thanks for working for that company so diligently for 30 years or more. So really those people in those days had very little to worry about in terms of how to save their money. They just worked hard, went to work, did what they were supposed to do, and then when they retired, they had a paycheck that they could rely on. Well, after 1978, when the 401k became available, a life changed when it comes to retirement for people going forward from that date on. Now, when the 401k came about, it put all the responsibility on us as the consumers to save money and invest it properly so that it could provide the lifestyle that we wanted later. And that becomes a problem because most of the people I run into, when they go to their 401k account, they have very little education about what types of investments they have available to them and how they work. And so that makes it very difficult on the consumer today to make good decisions about their money.
Now, you outline 7 things that people really should be aware of in your book as they approach this. Let's talk about each one of those in very brief detail and why they're important to know.
Well, are you talking about the first 7 simple steps to building a strong?
The very first 7 simple steps, yes.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about this. Now, these are very, very simple in concept, like you were saying, but number one is educate yourself about how money works. It's just as simple as that. You can't rely on anyone other than yourself to make a good decision. In other words, there's no one that cares about you more than you, and there's no more value than you can do than to educate yourself about how money works. So that's number one. Number two is to pay yourself before you pay any other person or company. Literally, every time you pay another company for a service or whatnot, you're adding to their bottom line. And so I think it just makes sense that if you pay yourself as if you were a company and you save that money for later on in the future, then ultimately that's the way that you grow wealth and start to save money. Number three is do not spend more than you make. I think that kind of goes with number two. Don't spend more money than you bring in on a monthly basis. It's just very, very simple concept that you wouldn't imagine the number of people I see who have a very difficult time doing that. The fourth thing is pay off debt as quickly as possible so that you can keep more of your money and pay less interest. Number five, invest the money that you pay yourself so it will provide a future income and you won't lose it. And that number five is a very important one, is if you really think about what the purpose of savings is and why do you save money in the first place. A lot of people say to grow it, but I disagree with that. I think they save it so they can provide themselves security in the future for most people. Mm-hmm. And security normally comes in the form of income for most people. Number six is buy insurance to protect the things you can't afford to lose. You know, if we buy insurance on everything that we do, so that we, especially car insurance, homeowners insurance, all types of different insurance to protect ourselves from things we can't afford to lose. That's number six. And number seven is once you put those things in place, simply trust yourself to do the right things because you've educated yourself and you've been disciplined. When you do that, there's something miraculous that happens, and that is that you start to accumulate money and you start to accumulate wealth. And it's really an exciting time when you see that happen for the first time, especially when you're younger.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is to get the ball rolling so that you see it's possible. And I don't think people really give themselves, I would say, the patience or the time to allow something like that to happen, as you're suggesting.
Oh, it's absolutely correct. I mean, let's face it, it's easier to do whatever it is when you want. If you want something right away, it's easier to just go out and get it. And I have a quote that I've kind of founded in Chapter 1. It says, financial success is reserved for those who aggressively seek financial knowledge and then apply that knowledge to create a prosperous life. Mm-hmm. So there's very few people in the world that are willing to pay a price to get what they want. That's why we see a lot of people out there that are having trouble financially. They just simply they don't have the education and the background to understand the importance of taking these very simple steps so that they can ultimately grow their wealth and provide themselves with security for the future.
Now, you also talk, as the title of the book suggests, to try to retire worry-free. What are some safe bets people could start putting money into that you would recommend?
Well, when it comes to investments, I really break it down into two categories. One is it takes risk or it's safe, and I kind of define risky as an investment that fluctuates in value. So it can go up and down. That could be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, pretty well anything. But as far as safe types of investments, we generally categorize those into a pretty small category. Really, we've got banks which offer FDIC insurance. So when someone puts their money into a bank account, they generally feel safe in the fact that if the bank were to go out of business, they've got FDIC insurance to cover them. Then we've got government bonds, which are simply backed by the claims-paying ability of our federal government. So, it's nice to know that the government can always raise taxes or print more money in order to guarantee their government bonds. And then we have insurance companies, and specifically we talk about fixed products with insurance companies, such as annuities, and those generally have some type of legal reserve system in place so that if something were to happen to the company, that there are some backup plans to protect the principal of the people who own those particular accounts. So really, those are three general places that have some type of guarantees associated with their backing that can help protect the money: banks, government, and insurance companies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you were also talking a lot about annuities, and it got me thinking about something that a lot of times maybe people overlook, and that's taxes and then fees. And you talk about that quite at length in the book.
That is true. When it comes to taxes and fees, there's, taxes are one of those things that many people overlook because they just feel like that, it's part of living in this country. We have to pay our taxes, but there are some strategies that you can use to have some significant tax savings, and annuities are just one of those types of investments that allow some tax benefits. But like you said, there are some fees associated with some annuity products, more specifically the variable annuity products. And there's a difference. When we talk about fixed annuities, generally there's a principal guarantee and a guaranteed interest rate, whereas a variable annuity generally is tied to some type of stock market type investment, so the value can decrease or increase. And we also see the majority of fees coming out on variable annuities as opposed to fixed annuities. So there is a fairly large difference between the two types of annuities in terms of their safety. But yeah, taxes and fees are certainly something that you have to look at and control in order to get the most out of your money.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing, too, that people should really consider as you're beginning to build wealth, of course, you said one of the first most important steps is to educate yourself about money, how does money work, and get a financial education, because certainly no one seems to be giving those to you in school. And then as you're building this wealth, you talk about the importance of insurance. Now, there's that bill that some people just don't like to pay, but talk about the importance of why insurance is very valuable to have in place as you're building wealth and even after you have it.
Well, I think it's interesting. I tell a story in my book about my family had a fire last Christmas. The day, I think it was 2 days after Christmas in 2012, our electricity had gone out because we had an ice storm in my town that I live in, and so we were without power. I have a wife and an 8-year-old son, and we were in the house, and we have a wood-burning fireplace in my home, and we had the fire burning bright to try to keep some heat in the house because there was no electricity. And in about the middle of the night, I told my wife, I said, "Honey, let's just stay here, and we'll try to stay as warm as we can. We'll just bundle up, and we'll be okay for the night." Well, a couple hours later, my wife woke up hearing a popping noise in our living room. So I went in to look at the popping noise in the living room. The fire seemed to be burning normally. So I went back into my bedroom, and through my bedroom we have French doors that goes out into a deck, and I could see some light dancing on the snow. So I walked outside to try to see where the light was coming from, and I looked up, and my chimney was completely on fire. And so I thought to myself, oh, my goodness. So we scurried around and got the child out, and I came back to the house and got out all our valuables, and I got all our clothes and pictures and things. And my son has a trampoline in the backyard, and as I was sitting on top of all the stuff on the trampoline, I looked up at my house breaking down due to the fire, and I had a feeling of peace that came over me because I thought to myself, it's bad that we're having a fire, but I've got all the important things that we have in the home out, and I've got homeowners insurance. And so I thought to myself, well, this isn't a problem. If one of my largest assets were to burn to the ground, I've done something very important. I have insured that large asset to ensure that my family's still going to have a place to sleep, and that we'd be able to recover and not ruin ourselves after years of work. Well, just imagine that same concept, but when it comes to your entire life savings. and you've saved for maybe 35 years and you've sacrificed and you've done all the things I talked about in those first 7 steps, and then you decide that, well, I think I'll just allow my money to be invested in such a way where if there is a fire, so to speak, or a major decrease in value, I'm just not going to have any type of insurance to prevent that large asset from decreasing significantly, all in a very short time period. It's very difficult for a person to feel comfortable and feel stress-free and happy about their retirement when they know that tomorrow could be the day that I lose, 30 or 40% of my entire life savings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the importance of insurance. It's not to. Well, no one likes to pay the premiums.
No, of course not.
Myself. I hate paying my homeowner's insurance premium, but I was sure glad I did pay for that premium and had the insurance coverage when my home burnt down. Same way with any type of investment or any type of thing that can cause you catastrophic loss. Mm-hmm. Is it worth a small premium in order to provide a peace or a stress-free atmosphere to know that if the worst case happens, you're going to be okay? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the insurance really plays a big part in the overall financial picture of someone's life.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron, on the show, we've talked quite a bit about what I'm going to bring up next, and you rarely see it out there really being talked about. And through the program, we hope also that we reach down into the younger generations and kind of get them to listen to it for reasons just like what I'm about to bring up. But one of the insurances to consider is long-term care insurance. Now, that can be huge when that time comes in your life that you find yourself possibly facing, needing care one way or the other. That'll sap you pretty fast. It's expensive. That's just the best way I can put it.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. We talk about that very fact. I talk about my house fire, and, I read some statistics. I'm not 100% accurate to what the source is, but I think the number was that on average you have about a less than a 20% chance, or it might even be less than 10% chance that in a lifetime you will have a house fire. And so the probability is really very low that you'll have a house fire, whereas the probability of a person, if you have a married couple, the probability of one of the people in that couple that will need a nursing home stay is more like 70%. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood of needing some type of care in one of their lifetimes is very, very, very high. And so is the cost of the care. So, depending on what part of the country that you live in, the cost of long-term care could literally destroy your life savings in a very short time period. I don't know what the cost of long-term care stays are in your state, but they could be anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000, $13,000 a month for a long-term care facility. So it's just a balancing act of I understand that people do not like to pay for insurance costs, and but when the probability starts to become very high that you will ultimately need care, and it's going to you'll have to just analyze what effect that's going to have on your overall financial picture, and that's where planning comes into play. And if you have a plan for it and you don't need the insurance to protect you, then don't buy it. Mm-hmm. But if you do feel like, well, if that did happen, that could destroy my family's future, then it might be a good idea to consider the different long-term care insurances that are out there. And, there's different types nowadays where you don't necessarily just have to pay on a monthly basis. There's some types of insurance that you can use it for long-term care purposes. You could take it out and spend it just like it's a savings account, or you could leave it to your beneficiaries if you passed away and never needed the money. Mm-hmm. So there are options out there for people if they look in the right places, and they can ultimately cover themselves quite nicely.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is a good time, do you think? I mean, obviously the answer will be right now, but, for people who are looking to put away for retirement, obviously the younger you are, the more time you have, the better things can look. But, a lot of people just don't do that. In fact, they don't even start saving their money. Like my father, for instance, didn't really start saving anything for retirement until he was, I believe, in his mid to late 40s. What are your thoughts on people who kind of take that long about what they can do, and is it possible to retire if you start late?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, the earlier you start, the easier it is in terms of mathematics. In other words, when time's on your side, you have the power of compounding interest, which will ultimately make the amount of money you have to save on a monthly basis much smaller. But let's say you are older, you're 40 years old, and you don't have hardly anything saved. In today's world, and this may be a little bit unusual for some people, but I believe that you have to start looking outside the box a little bit. What I mean by that is that ultimately the reason why most people save money in the first place is so that they can someday stop working and live off of the money that they've saved. However, when you're 40 years old, if you haven't saved any money whatsoever, you may feel overwhelmed to the point where you think there's no possible way that if I start now, I'll be able to save enough money to legitimately retire. And so for those types of situations, I almost encourage people to look outside the realm of traditional investments like stocks and bonds and mutual funds and annuities and look for business opportunities. In other words, consider rental property or other types of investments that you can control that are going to provide you some source of income in the future. So to give you an example, I write about my best friend in my book, and he had 4 kids. He's my age, in his mid-30s, had 4 kids, never made very much money at all. After college, he had a small home, and he was in the military, so he got transferred off into another town. And so the home that he did have in his previous town, he couldn't sell, so he decided that he would rent that property. Well, it's a funny thing that happened. His payment on the property with taxes and insurance and the mortgage payment was about $500 a month. But he found that he could rent that same property for $700 a month. And he realized that, hey, wait a minute, I'm making $200 a month in addition to my payment just by renting this property out. Now, there are risks to that, and people could destroy his properties or whatnot. But what he found was that he didn't have to have any money at all, $0, just a loan from a bank. And he was able to use the debt on that to rent out the property and make an income. Well, today, he has never used any of his own money, and we're looking at, over the course of the last 10 years or so, he's able to amass a great number of properties, and he'll have most of those properties paid off and be making $12,000 to $14,000 a month in income, and he never saved any money. It was all used off of debt and buying properties and renting those properties and letting the renters pay for the loan amounts. And he's going to end up with a large real estate portfolio. For him, he's happy with about $14,000-15,000 a month, and he never saved any money. And so, if you're in that position and you're thinking, I don't have a way out, you are going to the value of financial education about alternatives, like the one I just told you, will be one of your best friends, because it is possible to make that happen and turn your life around in a very short time period.
And that's what we've talked about very consistently on the show, and I think too often people are out there looking for that magic opportunity that comes around once in a lifetime. And one of the stories that I like to share is when I was talking with Mary Buffett, who's former daughter-in-law of Warren Buffett, and she had produced a series of books based on Buffettology. But anyway, one of the things they were talking about was the fact that here, one of the most heavily criticized opportunities that Warren Buffett had passed up on was investing in Intel, okay? And he still takes a beating for not investing in those guys, when he had the chance to today. And we all hear gee whiz, if I had only known about Microsoft, look at where I would be, or Apple Computer. We always hear about these lost opportunities. But going back to the Buffett story, what's encouraging about that is, that he got so slammed for not investing in Intel when the opportunity presented itself. And I'm thinking, okay, so you're going to tell the world's richest investor at one time that because he missed that opportunity, he's an idiot. There was a hell of a lot of other opportunities out there that he took advantage of, and that, as you say, as you get this financial education, we'll keep saying this over and over on the program, that you can learn about these things that are out there. And again, then you've got the word, well, this is risky, or there's risk involved. Well, the idea of a financial education is that you learn to manage your risk. You understand that that's the nature of it, but you understand how to deal with it as it happens, just as your friend did, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And, I can't impress upon people that no one cares about you more than you. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't care enough about your finances to educate yourself, then your finances will probably treat you like you treated it. Mm-hmm. And that's what you find a lot of times is if you don't have to become an expert. If you even myself, I'm in the financial services industry, and I seek out experts all the time, and I educate myself on a daily basis because I want to do better, and I want to help my clients do better. But what I found is that the more education that someone has, the better decisions that they can make, and they can identify opportunities that they might not have ever seen before. And it can be life-changing and transformational for a person's life when they think that there's no hope. And so that is very exciting. And my whole goal and mission in my business is to help people to reduce the amount of worry that they have around their money and increase their happiness level. And the one main way to do that is educating yourself about how the money works and what your plan is. Once you get to that point, what you're going to see is all those unreasonable fears about risk and lost opportunity and all these things, they will start to diminish, and your stress levels will decrease and your happiness levels will increase. And that's really what it's all about. If we can accomplish that and help people do that, then it's just very rewarding to see that happen.
I know I find it astonishing as sometimes you might turn on the 5 o'clock news and there's a poor little old lady that's been swindled out of all of her retirement, on an investment that was, potentially or became a scam. And I find it funny because maybe she was scammed, but if she had any kind of education, she could have probably seen that it was. But then they played into her greed and the short-sightedness that a lot of people have, like you said, when they get to a point of being in perhaps a desperate situation. So you make desperate choices, and that's risky. Or as one time they said, the riskiest advice that you can take from anyone is advice that you get for free.
That's absolutely correct. I think that is a very good key. Some people tell me, Aaron, I don't have any. I don't want to take the time to learn about all these different options and things that are out there. And my response to that would be, well, that's okay. You don't have to be an expert in every area. So how do you go about finding someone that you can speak with, a professional? And one of the ways that you can do that is by finding a fee-based financial planner. Mm-hmm. And here's why that's important. If you go to a financial professional and they don't charge you anything, and they say, well, this isn't going to cost you a fee, well, the question in your mind has to be, well, how is this person getting paid? And many times it's due to a product that they offer. It could be a stock or an investment or an insurance product or whatnot. And so what that does is that in the back of that person's mind, it skews their thinking because, let's face it, if you go to a banker, that banker's probably not going to suggest that you go off to the stockbroker to do your investments. They're probably going to recommend a bank product. Same way on the back end, someone, all they can do is sell you an insurance policy, they're probably going to sell you an insurance policy and not necessarily a stock market type investment or a bank product.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the keys with finding a type of an advisor that is something that maybe would be beneficial to you is to do a fee-based advisor. Now, you're going to pay for that. You'll have to pay a fee for their advice and their time, but that advisor probably is not going to have a specific type of investment or product that they're going to push on you because you're paying for the advice, not the actual product. Mm-hmm. And that is a big thing that a lot of people don't know, and they think that they may be saving money by going to an advisor that doesn't charge them a fee, but in many cases, that's just not true. And so that is something that people could take advantage of, is by going out and seeking out some type of fee-based advisor.
You know, it just occurred to me, Aaron, as I was thinking about what seems to be an interesting paradox here in the United States, and that is everybody wants to be wealthy, but nobody wants to really have to pay for anything. Can I get that for free? Or, oh, this is free. Oh, really? It's a free phone call. You know, and then they wonder why the advice doesn't pan out as much as it promised. Well, it was free. What did you think?
You know, what I've found in my time on this earth is that education is much less expensive than ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
way we've certainly gotten enough people on the 5 o'clock news to show just how true that is, isn't it? Aaron, do you have a website our listeners can find out more about Never Worry About Retirement Again?
Well, we do have a financial website that we use. It's CampbellFinancialAdvisory.com. The book is available for sale there, which will ultimately drive them to the Amazon.com, I believe. But the book is available at major bookstores across the country. And so, but that is our website that they could go to if they'd like to learn a little bit more about our specific process.
And there you go, folks. And again, keep it simple to get started and see if it captures your interest to indulge further in your financial education, which, as both of us are telling you, is the first step that you really want to take as you take the further steps beyond that. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. I enjoyed it.
And that website one more time?
CampbellFinancialAdvisory.com.
Very good. Aaron Campbell, thank you for joining us here on the program.
Thank
so there you go, folks. You never have to worry about retirement again. The first step is find out about this stuff. Learn for it, on your own as well. Take that extra time instead of watching the same program over and over on television. We also encourage you to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. And we do have our weekly news updates. Be sure to sign up for those as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.